Did you know the LA Kings have their own culinary partner? It's Superfood, celebrating 10 years and over 1 million meals served. Since 2020, the Kings have trusted Superfood to fuel their players. Now through Simply Lunch, you can bring that same performance-driven food to your office. Because when people eat better, they work better. Visit mysuperfood.com. That's mysuperfd.com. Or call 213-973-6145. Qualified companies can enjoy a free lunch for up to 10 managers.
Rolled all the way back through the neutral zone. Jets will send it back over the Kings line. Anderson intercepts, banks it out to center, and now Kempe after it. Pokes it down the middle. Kempe steps in. Right wing, Kuzmenko centers. Kopitar in front. They score! Oh, it was stunning! Kuzmenko to Kopitar to Kempe back post. And with 10:48 to play in the second, it's 2-1 LA.
You're listening to All the Kings Men, the official podcast of the LA Kings.
6:05 remaining in the game. 5-4 Vegas here at T-Mobile Arena. In comes Byfield. Left circle. Byfield centers. Tip. They score! On the doorstep. Brant Clark crashes the net. And with 6 minutes to play, it's 5-5 in Vegas.
Now, here's your host, Jesse Cohen.
Welcome back, Kings fans. I am Jesse Cohen. This is All the Kings Men. It's time to kick off the King of the Week standings for the 2025-26 season. The premise is simple. Every week I bring a guest on. We go through the week, take a look at the games played, and crown a King of the Week. I apply my very rigorous, totally scientific, and always correct point system to the conversation. At the end of the year, we have our King of the Week point totals that tell us who the most talked about players were. Joining me for our first week, John Hoven, a.k.a. the Mayor. Right, it is Monday morning. That means it's time to crown a King of the Week. The first King of the first King of the Week, I should say, of the 2025-26 season. And I had to get the King of the podcast on to help me crown the King of the Week. John Hoven, how are you doing today, John?
Doing great, Jess. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming. I've been talking to you a bunch lately. Went to your watch party at Ragin' Cajun on Saturday morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, you know what's funny is just before we were hitting record, I was thinking I've had more Jesse Cohen in my life this week than probably ever before because we had 2 Kings games together.
Yeah, that's right.
And we also had 2 Rain games together. Yeah. So, and then we're doing a podcast. So
that's right. It's a lot of collaborating.
Like the old days all over again.
Yeah. Yeah. So you know the routine. For those of you listening who do not, we are here to crown a King of the Week, and the process is simple. We pick an honorable mention, a runner-up, and then a King of the Week. Now, before we dive into this, John, I just want to throw out there, I was planning on doing it myself for weeks 1 and 2 of training camp. I only did the first week. I forgot all about the second week, but I did the rookie camp.
Okay.
So real quick, I'm just going to tell you who I picked, and you can tell me how wrong I am if you want.
Sure. I'd have to think back, though.
Well, you know, I had Seville, George, and Zemer.
Okay. I didn't. You totally threw me off when you said Seville, but okay.
Yeah, for rookie camp.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
And Zemer, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
Right.
I'll go with those 3.
Great. Okay, good. And then in the week 1 of preseason, I had Malott, Greentree, and Turcotte.
Definitely would agree with Turcotte. Definitely would agree there. So I would say, you know, Clark probably deserved a little bit of mention as well, but sure.
Yeah. All right. So let's just jump straight into the real season. There's 3 games so far on the season. This will cover all 3 of them. There was a loss on opening night to the Colorado Avalanche, a win the following night against the Vegas Golden Knights, and then a loss to the Winnipeg Jets. They're 1 and 2. So who's your honorable mention, John?
Well, first off, if you're only going to win 1 game out of the 3, at least they won the most important of the 3 games.
100%.
So I will say that.
I mean, unfortunately, then Vegas had that dynamite comeback against the Sharks, which is like, on the one hand, good, because forever shaming the Sharks is always great. And there was no way for a Pacific Division opponent not to get 2 points out of that game. Mm-hmm. But it would have been nice if the Golden Knights didn't pick up 3 points in 2 games.
That probably would have helped the Kings. But
yeah,
honorable mention, I'm going to go with, and it's kind of weird because there were 3 games. So normally you would think that's a large enough body of work, but I really struggled on this one. I'm going to go with Andrei Kuzmenko on this one. He did have a goal. He picked up 2 assists in the 3 games. He also had 6 shots on goal. Probably want to see him shoot the puck a little bit more over 3 games than just 6 shots on goal. But in 16, just shy of 17 minutes on average per game, that's what he produced this week. So I'm going to go with Andrei Kuzmenko.
I think that's a fine choice. Kuzmenko with 3 points on the week in those 3 games. And, I guess I'll sort of tip my hand right now. I thought about just going with all 3 members of the top line because they all had 3 points. But I thought that's lazy. And
it would have made for some good argument because.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
I am going, for my honorable mention, I'm going with Brant Clark.
Okay.
Because Brant Clark, it's an incredibly small sample size, which is a word that I'm already tired. It's a phrase I'm already tired of, and yet I feel compelled to use over and over and over again. Brant Clark has done something over 3 games that I am fascinated by. I don't know if anybody else cares. It won't last all season. It's bound to happen eventually. But so far, he has not been on the ice for a goal against. Mm-hmm. And I just think that's neat. The way Marge Simpson thinks potatoes are neat. I just think it's neat.
Why don't you bring this potato? It's pretty big.
Mom, you're always trying to give me potatoes. What is it with you?
I just think they're neat.
And also, he had an incredible goal to tie the game against Vegas. And in a 3-game start to a season where the team's vaunted defensive identity has not really come through for them, to not be on the ice for a goal against, pretty neat. It's good enough for honorable mention from me, so I'm going with Brant Clark.
Not a bad choice. Might hear his name coming up again later.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
My runner-up was the forward who had the second most ice time of these three games here, clocking in at 57 minutes and 15 seconds. Had a goal, had an assist. Unfortunately, he was a -4 over the 3 games. I mentioned that only because you talked about guys getting scored on.
Yeah.
Quentin Byfield is my runner-up for the week.
Okay. I like it. He is what was the stat you gave about time on ice?
57-15. He was second most among the forwards. Kempe was just a tick ahead of him.
Okay, yeah, and he is, it's funny, right? There was a lot of conversation about what's the top line, what's the second line, blah, blah, blah. Quentin Byfield finished last season, I think over the last 32 games, whatever it was after the trade deadline. I'm pretty sure he finished with more time on ice per game than Kopitar did.
I believe that you are correct, and in this small sample size,
yeah,
I'm going to work that into. Byfield, Deneau, both had more time on ice than Kopitar did over the first 3 games. And it was really not even close. Byfield played in 2 minutes more than Kopitar. So, yeah, Byfield 1, Deneau 2, Kopitar 3 in terms of the centers.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, people talk about, can Byfield replace Kopitar? Just between you and me and anybody listening, I think the answer is no, but in the most respectful way possible. Like, he will be the de facto player who takes over Anze Kopitar's role, but that's not the same as replacing Anze Kopitar. And it's no disrespect to Quentin Byfield. Quentin Byfield could go on to have a Hall of Fame career. Mm-hmm. It will be very hard to best the career of Anze Kopitar. And that's really just putting Anze Kopitar on a pedestal. It's not meant to denigrate Quentin Byfield at all.
Yeah, but I also think that's you're kind of missing the point, though. I think that what people are wondering is who's going to take over the 1C when Kopitar leaves.
It'll be Byfield, but then my question is who takes over the 2C? That's a whole other conversation that is not. I've not really seen a lot of people, because that's really the issue then moving forward. You have a replacement for Kopitar, it's Byfield, mm-hmm. But then who replaces Byfield? Regardless, my runner-up is in fact Anze Kopitar, who also had 3 points in the first 3 games of the season, and he was a +1, and he played 18-27 a game. And I don't want to lean into this too hard over the course of the season, but he did announce that he's planning to retire at the end of the year.
He did?
This does make it, yes, this does make it the first few games of the season for him, the first game at home, the first game on the road, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. And there was some concern may not be the right word, but curiosity as to whether or not the chemistry between Kuzmenko, Kopitar, and Kempe would carry over from last season to this season. And at least in the offensive zone, it seems to be not have missed a beat. 3 points for each of them through the first 3 games. And Kopitar is a huge part of that. That pass to Adrian Kempe on the goal, I want to say it was against Winnipeg, was a great heads-up play from him. And, not a lot of players could or would make that pass. And to play that many minutes at his at his age, as if he's not 12 years younger than me, or no, more than that. Anyway, Andrei Kopitar, a lot of words will be spoken about him this year. He's a tremendous king. He's a tremendous athlete. He's a tremendous hockey player, and he's my runner-up this week.
Can I just add to that from my perspective, that line built throughout the week. I didn't think they were particularly good in game 1 for the majority of it. Now, that also could have just been a byproduct of there wasn't a lot cooking offensively for the team in general, but I didn't think that particular line was impressive throughout the game, and I thought they were much better in game 2, and then of course I thought they were good in game 3. So to me, they kind of built throughout the week. That to me was sort of the separator, because I thought the Byfield line by and large was pretty good throughout the first 3 games.
We may get into this later, but what I find sort of it's like potatoes and Brant Clark not being on the ice for a goal against. It's just neat. Kopitar, Kempe, and Kuzmenko 3 points each in the first 3 games. Fiala, Byfield, and Laferriere. Oh, I looked at it earlier and it was 2 points each, but now I'm looking at it and it's not 2 points each. Doughty has 2 points, but Fiala and Byfield 2 points each. And Laferriere doesn't even have a point. Why did I think he has 2? It doesn't matter. Top 3 scorers have 3 points each a game. The second 3 scorers have 2 points each in 3 games. I just think it's neat. Anyway, you're king of the week, John. Sorry. It's
okay. You're really leaning into the neat, which I guess is better than you leaning into nice like I used to, which was annoying. Neat, I guess I'll have to live with.
Yeah.
My king of the week, you've actually already mentioned his name, number 92, Brant Clark. Yeah. I think he is the king of the week this week over the first 3 games. Impressive what he's been able to accomplish on the ice, and not playing a ton of minutes either, regardless of what the pregame sheet says he is, in terms of pairing and everything else. But Clark logged a total of 52 minutes, which was obviously significantly less than someone like Doughty, who was at 70 minutes, and even less than guys like Dumoulin as well. So very curious to see what this second week is going to bring for Brant Clark. At least initially, he'll still be paired with Joel Edmondson, but we'll have to see how long that lasts as well, because the defense, Jesse, is definitely a work in progress.
It is, and this is one of those fascinating things to me. So Brant Clark, if I'm not mistaken, has played the 4th most minutes, I think, out of defensemen on the team.
Yes.
And yet the pair of he and Edmondson are the 3rd most frequently played pair. Now it's a difference of 3 seconds. Dumoulin and Ceci, and we're talking about even strength. Dumoulin and Ceci have played 36 minutes and 42 seconds together. Edmondson and Clark have played 36 minutes and 39 seconds together. And yet Brant Clark has, picked up some extra time without Joel Edmondson. Some of that's on the power play. Some of that's, late game situations, etc.
Second unit power play, definitely, for sure. He would pick some minutes up.
But I mean, I don't remember what game it was. I think it might have been the Vegas game, but I sort of half tongue in cheek tweeted out, is Brant Clark the best player on the Kings right now? Because he's looked really good. And Jim Hiller even talked about, his drive and his compete and his heads up play and everything. And yeah, the defense is a work in progress, but Brant Clark appears to have done his work in the summer, right? Like this is a big year for him, and he seems ready to embrace it.
Since we haven't mentioned his name, now that we've rattled off the other 5 defensemen, do we at least want to mention Cody Ceci has 7 blocks up until now through 3 games, and that is tops on the team. I know that he's taken his lumps in a variety of other areas, but 7 blocks. You want to talk about that at all, or
we'll put a pin in it. We'll come back to it.
Okay.
Because unfortunately, John, you are incorrect as far as who the king of the week is.
Oh yes, I'm so sorry. Please tell me who is it? Darcy Kemper?
No. No, it's not.
Okay. Who is
In
it?
fact, Darcy Kemper is a leading candidate for my new Bizarro award.
Bizarro of the week?
Yes, exactly. No, the king of the week is Adrian Kempe.
Okay.
And part of that is just going to be my own personal historical nostalgia, which is that Adrian Kempe enters the season without a contract.
Mhm.
And historically, Kings players entering a season without a contract has not played out tremendously well for their future career with the LA Kings. They either don't sign one or it leaks to the media and it gets ugly and they wind up being traded and then booed for years before coming back and having their number retired.
Where are you going with all this?
You know exactly where I'm going with it.
No, I understand what you're referencing. I'm wondering where you're going with Kempe.
The point is he's come in and he's got 3 points in 3 games, right? It doesn't appear to be a distraction at all. And that goal that he scored, I won't waste everybody's time going into too much detail about what I think about how assists are handed out, but he deserved an assist on his own goal because that entire play started out with him poking the puck ahead in the offensive zone. I mean, when I jokingly asked, is Brandt Clark the best player on the Kings right now? Some of the responses were, no, it's Kempe, but Clark's the best defenseman. And Adrian Kempe is probably the best Kings player right now. I mean, just as far as like all around game impact. And again, no disrespect to Doughty or Kopitar, who are still very good. They're just not the same version of themselves that they were at their peak. And Adrian Kempe is 10 years younger than, Andrei Kopitar, 8 years younger, whatever it is. So,
well, Jim Hiller might agree with you because he as we said earlier, he played Kempe more minutes than any other forward. And Kempe, to your point, certainly was doing his job. He fired off 12 shots on goal to lead the team among all skaters. So he wasn't hiding there on the top line. He was out there working.
Yeah, and that goal that he scored was not exactly razzle dazzle, right? Like he started it off and then he did exactly what you want someone to do, which is drive straight to the net. And so 3 points, 12 shots, the most minutes of any forward, everything's a work in progress on this team right now because it's early, but Adrian Kempe is not. Adrian Kempe has shown up and looks every bit the Adrian Kempe that we all know and love. So to start out week 1, he is actually the king of the week. So congratulations, Adrian Kempe, this week's king of the week. Now let's talk about those block shots.
Okay.
Because there are 2 reasons I believe that Cody Ceci and Brian Dumoulin were brought in. One is that they're 6'3" and 6'4" respectively, I think. If I have that
Someone
correct.
needs to measure Dumoulin though, because that dude might be 6'6".
I'm glad you brought that up. There are 2 kinds of height liars in the NHL right now, and there are 0 accurate height people.
Right.
Well, actually, that's not true. Kopitar might be 6'4".
I would say so.
Half the guys in the league are lying about being shorter than they are, right? Like, there's no way that Samuel Hellenius is 6'6". There's no way that Dumoulin's 6'4".
No.
There's no way that Malat is, what is he listed at, 6'5", I think? Like, he's got to be.
Yeah.
I think he's taller than that. And then the other half of the guys, I've told this story privately. I can't remember if I've told it on the podcast or not, but one of the many horrible parts about the last few months for me was discovering that I'm actually 5'8". I've been telling people that I'm 5'10" for years, and my driver's license said 5'10" for years. I don't know, but when I was in the hospital one day,
they say that with age that you shrink a little bit.
I think maybe I did.
Okay.
Because I got measured at the hospital, and I was horrified to discover that I'm in fact only 5'8". Well, if
hold
I'm
on to 5'10", baby, don't let it go.
Listen, with my shoes on. But when I'm standing,
you don't wear shoes, Jesse.
Well, sometimes I do. When I'm in the locker room and I'm standing talking to these guys, that the press, information says 6'1", and we're eye to eye talking about whatever. I'm like, there's no way you're 6'1". Like, get out of here. Meanwhile, I've got to climb on a ladder just to like look up to talk to Sammy Hellenius.
Yeah.
So, yeah, anyway, the point is the other reason that Dumoulin and Ceci were signed is because they block shots. The only problem with blocking shots is that it's a bit in the same category as hits, which is you generally speaking only get a lot of hits if you don't have the puck. And you're blocking a lot of shots if you're not getting the puck out of your own zone. And, so listen, Alec Martinez, a prodigious shot blocker and obviously a tremendous asset to any hockey team. So a high number of block shots is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's also not necessarily a good thing. So to use your favorite word, I need context before I judge a high number of block shots as good or bad.
I love it. That's a good one.
Where are we on the 1 and 2 start, though? Speaking of context.
Yeah. Well, I would say this. I don't love it.
No.
But without sounding like I'm in the mushy middle, I mean, I don't hate it either. You have those 8 of 11 on the road. You're facing 3 tremendous teams there. That any one of them could have, you could convince me they're going to the Stanley Cup final this year. Of course, I'm talking about Colorado, Vegas, and Winnipeg. So, I mean, great goaltending and Connor Hellebuck, MVP type candidates on each team. It was going to be a tough start, but I sort of look at it the same way that I look at what happened on opening night. Opening night was not good. Jim Hiller said he liked the way they played defensively, but the offense wasn't going. Unless you missed the game and you just looked at the final score, you would say, what the hell is Hiller talking about, right? Colorado scored 6 goals. How do you like the defense? But the context was part of that answer there, right? And then the next night, the offense was working and the defense wasn't there in Vegas. But where I was going is I look at it like this. You lost the first game and then you win the second game and it just sort of settles everything down, right? Because if they had started 0-2, even though it would have made sense to start 0-2 against those 2 teams, and the sky wouldn't have been falling and the world would not have been ending and there were 80 more games, etc., just 1-1 feels a lot better than 0-2 feels. And so, we have an odd number here. So, 2-1 feels better than 1-2. I just look at it, though, that 1-2 to me sort of felt the same way that it did about the team at 1-1. It's a work in progress. They need to sort of figure a couple of things out. I think the offense has been a little bit ahead of the defense. That's my opinion. And in talking to some of the players, because there were more changes defensively than there were offensively, because, think about it, they returned the top 9 intact, essentially. So the chemistry should be there, and they should be a little bit ahead. And we used the phrase earlier, work in progress. The defense, even though you're getting Doughty back, he missed over half the season last year. So it's almost like 3 new defensive pairs, right? You get Doughty's with Anderson, and they didn't, they missed over half the season last year. Then you have Clark playing with Edmondson, but even though they played together last year, they're being elevated theoretically this year, and Clark's going to allegedly get more time on the power play. He has the green light, as Jim Hiller told us recently. And then you have the new guys in Dumoulin and Ceci, and then now they're already being shuffled around. So I guess I'm okay with it, is what I'm trying to say. I'm not panicked. I'm not worried. I'm not even concerned. I'm assuming they're going to figure it out.
So I love horrible questions with no answers. And the one question I just need an answer for, and we'll never get it, and ultimately it won't matter, but that game against Vegas, is it good that they got out to a 3-0 lead? Bad that they then blew the lead? Good that they then tied it up? Is it good or bad, right? Because it could go either way.
Why can't it be both? Why can't it be both?
It can be, but if we're evaluating, and there's no reason to evaluate a 3-game set as if it means anything, but if we are, then you taking a 1-2 record, and if the 1 is a sort of is a little bit of good, is a little bad, that puts a lot more bad in your column than good.
Well, no, because what about the Winnipeg game? Why can't you say the same thing? Why can't
they lost?
Say they did, but why can't you say there was some good in there, but there was some bad in there also? There was good that they were able to generate, and they were able to tie the game, and they didn't fold on the road. The bad is they ultimately ended up losing, but it was a 3-2 game. That's a coin flip game.
Sure, but a coin flip game if you're forcing the issue. A shootout game actually is a coin flip game. Like their record could easily be 0-2-1. But and so I just look at it and I go like, well, the Winnipeg game, were they up 2-1 and then gave up the tying goal, or were they down 2-1 and scored the? Sorry, I was at the watch party, so
weren't they up 2-1?
I think they were.
Probably both have it wrong.
But in the
there
Vegas
was a lot
game,
going on.
But so like the Vegas game was like, I remember watching it and thinking to myself, well, this is lunacy. They lost at home and they're going to win on the road. This is totally bucked my expectations. This is crazy. And then Vegas comes back and scores 5, and you're like, oh. But then they claw back into it, and you're like, okay. So it's just, to me, it's like, well, and I can't remember the game that happened last year, but I had a very similar response to it, which is like, well, is it good that this happened, or is it bad that this happened? Because yes, good and bad things both happen, but if I'm trying to evaluate what to take away from it, like I don't know. And like I said, there is no answer to it. And 30 games from now, it won't matter, because the record will be whatever it'll be, and that'll just be a night that they won. So who cares? I do though want to talk about the news that Zach Dooley reported from practice this morning, that the 3 defensive pairs, 2 of them have been changed. It was Dumoulin, Doughty, Edmondson and Clark, and Anderson and Ceci. And I saw people expressing confusion online, John, and I just want to give you my opinion, and you can tell me what you think of it.
By the way, before you move on, I did look it up real quickly. They were up 2-1.
Okay.
It was Iafallo who scored first, and then Mikey Anderson, followed by Kempe, and then it was Scheifele who came back and scored the next 2 for Winnipeg.
So 2 blown leads in back-to-back games. That's tough. My take on the defensive pair shuffling, which, and also to be clear, doesn't mean we'll see in the game. Right, like
absolutely does not mean that. You're 100% clear. Well, Jim Hiller likes to experiment in practice.
Yeah.
So yes.
So just because it was one day of practice doesn't mean nothing. And even if they start the game that way, doesn't mean he won't go right back to it, or doesn't. Who knows? Maybe it'll be jumbled all game long. Who knows? But anyway,
let's also bring DJ Smith into the conversation.
Yes.
Jesse. Sorry, not to hijack it.
No, it's fine.
But Hiller does lean. For those that don't pay close attention, he does lean heavily upon his assistants, and he has even gone so far as to say he doesn't even really know who the pairs might be, and that DJ is moving things around mid game and in game and things like that.
Doesn't get involved in goaltending or defense.
Yeah, right. So we talk a lot about and say Hiller and Hiller this and Hiller that, when in fact, it's really DJ Smith who is, Hiller might have some input into it, but he does allow his assistant coach to coach.
Is Jim Hiller the most NFL head coach that the NHL has ever seen?
Yes, he might. Yes, I don't call the plays. My offensive coordinator calls all the plays. Yeah, I don't know.
So anyway, the reason that I wasn't surprised at all to see it is that Edmondson and Clark are playing really well. Now, again, its sample size is only 3 games, blah, blah, blah. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I believe is the phrase they use. Like, just why would you tamper with that? It's working. The other 2 are not. And there's really only so many things you can do if you're going to tamper with 2 pairs and not the third. And so that's pretty much it, unless you want to go with 2 lefties and 2 righties, which seems out of the question. So if we see it in a game, the only question then becomes how many minutes does each pair get? Because Mikey Anderson is not just Robin to Drew Doughty's Batman anymore. And so it would seem weird for him to get quote unquote third pair minutes, which is part of the reason I'm not necessarily sure that those pairings will show up in the game or that they'll last very long.
I would say that the defensive alignment is the thing that I am most intrigued about heading into the Minnesota game. Not only how they start, but how they are deployed and ultimately used, and none of that can be evaluated until the end of the night. And you also look at it through a different lens, depending if the team won or if the team lost. But I'm very curious about all that. And I'm also curious about something else. And I understand your point about not putting Clark with Dumoulin right now because Clark and Edmondson are working well together. However, I will continue to beat this drum until maybe midseason when it's no longer a story. But Clark and Dumoulin started training camp together. And from what I've heard, Jim Hiller had spoken with them heading into training camp and wanted them as a pair, and they were skating together. They started camp together, etc. And the last preseason game, Jesse, the one that took place at Crypto.com Arena on the last Saturday before the regular season, they were scheduled to be a pair, from what I'm told. You know, their names are on the whiteboard in the room. The coaches put the lineup on the whiteboard. And as the guys were in the room getting ready and taping their socks and doing all that stuff, it was supposed to be Clark and Dumoulin in that game. And 5 minutes, I was told, 5 minutes before they were leaving the room to go out onto the ice, one of the coaches walked in and erased the defense and put Clark back with Edmondson. And so the change happened 5 minutes before warm-ups happened, and they haven't been together since. Now, mind you, Clark and Edmondson have been fine through the last 3 games, but I just bring this up because there's something there. I don't know what, I don't know why. It could just be as simple as they've put a pin in it and they'll get back to it later. But it's one of the other elements that sort of intrigues me about putting Dumoulin up with Doughty, which didn't necessarily surprise me because Doughty was raving about Dumoulin throughout training camp. And he was really excited about the opportunity to potentially play with him. At some point, he wasn't saying, I don't want to play with Mikey. He was just, complimenting the player and was excited to have him. And didn't realize, according to Drew, he was saying, I didn't realize how good he was with the puck. So he was really excited about him being added to the team. So anyway, the point is, I think at some point, Dumoulin and Clark becomes a conversation, even though it's not a conversation point right now, if that makes any sense.
I genuinely hope that what I'm about to say does not offend you.
Oh, here we go.
I think one of the biggest differences between you and I is that you tend to believe what you hear from people that I don't think say things that are true a lot.
Well, that's a weird statement.
Yeah. Well,
I believe things that are confirmed by multiple people rather than things that are said
but like whether or not the pairs on the board were what they were until 5 minutes before the game or whatever, my attitude will always be Doughty likes to play with Anderson and Doughty will play with Anderson until it changes, because I'm just basing it on what I've seen. Kopitar likes to play with who Kopitar likes to play with. Sure. Doughty likes to play with who Doughty likes to play with. Jim Hiller.
This isn't about Doughty or Kopitar.
No, I understand. But Jim Hiller likes to go with what Jim Hiller likes to go with. And until I said the same thing about Detroit when they had made the playoffs for however many years in a row it was. And everyone was like, well, Detroit's going to make the playoffs. And I was like, or one year someone was like, Detroit's not going to make the playoffs. And I was like, well, eventually they won't. But until that day comes, I'm just going with they will.
So your point is that Edmondson will always be paired with Clark until he's not?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
And it's mostly about Doughty and Anderson. Whether or not they split up Edmondson and Clark and Dumoulin and Ceci. But the issue for me is this: Jim Hiller likes Edmondson. And I know that's true because last year in the playoffs, Edmondson played a ton of minutes. So the issue for me now is that the organization has...
Oh, so nobody told you that. You saw it with your own eyes.
Yeah. And I'm saying that's the difference, is that I don't care what they say. They say all sorts of crazy stuff. What they say never pans out. Like, so I don't care what they say. I know what I watched and I know what happened, which is why I'm most confused by Yoel Armia and not being the number one penalty killer. That to me is the big fascinating thing for me.
I think you really just wanted to bring that up so that you could say Yoel, because that was probably the highlight of your training camp, him giving you his pronunciation. Yes. And then seconds later calling himself Joel.
For those who don't know, I am a stickler for pronunciation of people's names.
Even though you get several of them wrong, which I still find funny.
Don't, to be clear. What name have I ever gotten wrong? If you say Sammy
Jacob Mavari, you get that one wrong.
I most certainly do not.
Say it.
I actually cannot, so I don't. I it's something like along the lines of Muviarare. I don't know. I can't.
Okay.
I've heard him say it a million times. First of all, it's one of the few players on the team I like. Anyway, the point is, I walked up to Yoel Armia and I said, "Hi, I'm Jesse. Blah blah blah. How do you pronounce your name?" And he said, "Joel is fine." And I said, "That's not I appreciate that, but what I would like to know is how would your family refer to you in Finland? And he said, Yoel. And I said, great. Hi, Yoel. I'm Jesse. And he said, hi, I'm Joel.
I absolutely love the
I
story.
said, great. Okay. Thanks, Yoel. I'm going to call him Yoel. Everyone else is going to call him Joel. That's not his name. I'm calling him Yoel.
All
Anyway.
right, let's focus on the more important part,
Yes.
which is the usage and the
Yes.
deployment of him.
The point is Doughty's
fascinating.
Well, to me it is, but let's talk about the
I
defense
agree.
first. Then we'll get to Armia. Doughty's going to play the most minutes on the defense until he doesn't. Someday when he's 42, he'll be bumped down to the third or fourth pair. Well, there's no fourth pair, but eventually he won't be playing 25 plus minutes a night. But it ain't
I'll
today.
believe it when I see it.
Yes, exactly. It ain't going to be today.
He played 25 minutes in the preseason.
Yes.
Give me a break.
And to be clear, I don't have a problem with it. I see a lot of people getting mad about it. It doesn't bother me.
It's not an issue.
Yeah. Mikey Anderson, like I said, not a Robin to Doughty's Batman anymore. Mikey Anderson is a defensive stalwart in his own regard. He's not like a top 10 defenseman or anything because he doesn't have much of an offensive game, but he's really good.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not going to play him 15 minutes a night.
No.
He's going to be on the penalty kill. He's going to be, late in games, there are going to be opportunities. And also he and Doughty, whether or not Doughty and Anderson like playing together, Doughty and Anderson have played together.
Mm-hmm.
So there's chemistry, there's familiarity, there's continuity, etc. I just find it really hard to believe that like all of a sudden we're just going to split up the pair that have been playing together for 5 years or whatever it's been.
Well, there's a difference between starting the game together and finishing the game together. So it's back to what I said a moment ago. It's one of the reasons I'm so fascinated with the game on Monday against Minnesota is how will it all play out defensively? Because through 3 games, they've been pretty static in what they've done, and they're clearly open to some change. How much? I guess we'll find out.
And I mean, let's not mince words. The only reason this is happening and is a topic of conversation is that Dumoulin and Ceci have been on the ice for 5 against it, I think.
It hasn't been the best pair. No.
But to be fair, Doughty and Anderson have also been on the ice for goals against. Pairs as pairs go, Dumoulin and Ceci 5 against, Anderson and Doughty 2 against, Edmondson and Clark 0. That's not dealing with them as individuals. That's just when they're out there as pairs. This conversation isn't happening if the Dumoulin and Ceci pair isn't 0 goals for, 5 goals against. I mean, that's what we're really talking about. But
probably wouldn't be a topic of conversation if the team was 3-0 also.
No, well, also true. But Edmondson has not played as much as I thought he would early so far, but played a ton last year and played a ton over. Like Edmondson played more minutes than Gavrikov did in the playoffs. As an underreported fact.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think this was a season where Brandt Clarke, for multiple reasons, Brandt Clarke needs playing time this season. For his own personal development, for the team's goals for him in development. I'm sure his agent is pushing for it.
But Brandt Clarke is earning those minutes as well. So
no question.
But there are times where a general manager says, hey, this guy needs to play more minutes. Or there are times where a coach is saying, hey, I want to play this guy more minutes, right? I'm going to invest in him now for later. That's not really the situation that we're talking about exclusively here. We're talking about a situation where this defenseman and Brandt Clarke came into camp in great shape, ready to go, worked on the things they asked him to, and basically has earned quite a bit of praise from Jim Hiller. And I don't know about you, Jesse, but just in talking to Clarke, there's a difference about him. Clarke is still Clarke. He's still a happy guy, but he just seems more focused, more serious, more mature, whatever you want to call it. To me, there's a difference. There's whether it's focus, I don't know what the right word is, but there is a difference in Brandt Clarke that I noticed during training camp and here in the early part of the season.
It's possible. I didn't notice it, but I didn't notice anything that contradicts that. My point in referencing all of that is simply to say they clearly wanted Edmondson and Clarke together last year.
Mm-hmm.
And so at least at even strength, obviously Edmondson's not going to get power play time, and obviously Clarke isn't going to get penalty kill time.
No, you never know the way that they're using Armia.
Well, that's true. But I just feel like 5-on-5, that's the pair.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we've seen. It's working. They're 5 goal or I can't remember how many goals they've been on the ice for together. 2 goals for, 0 goals against. It's working. So that brings us to our next mystery. We might as well dive right into it, which is Armia. And to be clear, this is a mystery that matters to nobody. This is just an oddity. It doesn't matter. I don't think it's costing them on the ice. I just think it's weird. The way I think the way I think stuff is neat, this is just weird. When they signed Armia,
I think it's more than weird.
well,
I think it's pretty odd.
Okay, fine. But like 3 games in, it's like, it could just be a function of, like you said, being a work in progress. Who knows? But when they signed Armia, I think he's making $2 million a year.
2.5, I think.
It's a very low cost acquisition. He's a free agent. He's not gobbling up cap space, and he fills a role perfectly the way I assumed he was brought in to do, right? You need a 4th line. You need veteran presence. He's huge. He brings size. And then on top of that, he kills penalties. And when I say he kills penalties, what I mean is, of all the forwards in the league who killed penalties over the last 3 seasons, he was 3rd in the league in time on ice shorthanded. And number 2 in the league was his penalty killing buddy in Montreal. Like that, he's playing over 2 minutes a game on the penalty kill for Montreal over the last 3 seasons. The Kings didn't have a single forward playing that much time on ice. And he was coming in to be a 4th liner, which meant that your 4th line was now going to be, your penalty killers was going to be great. It just made so much sense to me. And then he's not being used like that. Now he is killing penalties. He's out there. I think he's the 4th most frequently used forward through 3 games, maybe the 3rd. I can't remember. I should have it pulled up, but like, it's just not what I expected, which just proves that what I expected doesn't matter. But, 4th, Deneau, Moore, and Byfield have played more minutes than he has shorthanded. That's weird.
Seeing him on the power play is
yes,
weird.
also weird.
So,
yes.
Yeah, I mean, just I don't know. I don't have a good explanation. It's something to keep an eye on. I mean, I would agree with you. It's not something that is costing them games or anything like that, but clearly Hiller wants to test something out here.
He's played more minutes on the power play than he has on the penalty kill. Now it's only 3 games, but it's still weird.
Probably has never been able to say that at any other point in his career.
Yeah.
And he's played 700 games or something. It's odd. It's something to keep an eye on. And Hiller definitely has an idea of wanting to use him in a certain way or want to test him in certain ways, because he's even willing to move him up the lineup more than just like from the 4th line to the 3rd line and give him, second pair or second line minutes if needed. So, just something to keep an eye on.
To me, the reason it's more interesting than just an odd, like, 4th line penalty killer doesn't play as many minutes as you thought. My recollection, and I could have this wrong, is that at the trade deadline last year, Rob Blake did a media availability where he spoke to the media and he said, this is what you can expect from here to the end of the season. Hellenius is going to be in the lineup. The defensive pairs are going to be this. This is what it's going to look like. This is what we're going to do. And it happened. They did it. Mm-hmm. And you went, oh, okay. That's noteworthy. Rob Blake came in and kind of laid the blueprint, and then Jim Hiller followed it until the playoffs when things went a little wonky.
That's what we're calling it?
Yeah, sure. Sideways, wonky, okay. Whatever you want. Things went disastrously, horribly, terribly, depressingly wrong. How's that?
It's more accurate, but sure.
Okay. But Rob Blake's not the general manager anymore.
Correct.
And Jim Hiller's been the head coach for a year and 5 months. I don't remember, but like really just a year.
It was February when he came in as the replacement.
Yeah. Right. So season and a third, maybe.
Okay, fair.
DJ Smith was hired shortly after Todd McClellan was relieved of his duties, so he's relatively new. Newell Brown is relatively new. Mike Buckley is relatively new. The point is that, like, the strong voices in the room, I just don't know who they are. So if Jim Hiller gets it in his head that he wants to go rogue and do Jim Hiller stuff, which we know he does. And to be clear, 95% of the time it works. It's just unfortunate that last year, the time that it didn't work was the worst possible time for it to not work.
Look, over 84 games, I think the record speaks for itself, right?
Sure. It's just those
what
pesky
happened in the
last
next
4
couple.
games. Yeah. But so my curiosity is just looking at it and going, wow, okay, well, we're 3 games into this. Last year, I don't remember how long it was before they broke up Fiala, Byfield, and Fogel, but it was like 7 games, 10 games.
I was gonna say it was around 10. So
yeah, it wasn't very
You're
long,
in the ballpark, yeah.
but it was a little bit longer than 3.
Yes.
And I don't think they got off to a terrible start last season. I don't remember what the record was at the time of the switch, but I don't think it was like, I don't think they were under 500. Maybe they were. I don't remember. So just the switching the D pairs, using Armia in a way that is not what I expected. Yeah, well, just not what I expected, which again, maybe I'm an idiot for expecting the wrong thing, which is entirely possible. Like, obviously
for other reasons, but I'm going to give you a pass on this one.
I don't think I'm an idiot, but it's possible. I'm allowing for the possibility. But no, it's just all of a sudden it's 3 games in and we're starting to see things where you're like, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And so it just makes me wonder, like, is this going to be, I've already said it on the royalhef.com. Like, I think this is going to be a Bizarro season. I think we're just going to see a bunch of wacky stuff where, in the last Bizarro season I can remember, I don't like to talk about because it happened in between 2014 and 2016. And I don't know. I have this weird feeling that it's going to be a weird year and I can't shake it.
Well, we are 3 games into the season, so maybe you'll shake it eventually.
I hope by game 10, things have settled into place and this team looks exactly like the best version of itself that we all think it can be, which to be clear is a very good team. But for right now, it's a work in progress.
So let me ask you this from a roster perspective. So we've spent all this time now talking about the defense and how the defense is going to be changing. People are screaming for Mavari to be inserted into the lineup. And I would just say, I don't see how that's possible on a regular basis because, this is a guy who's basically on a league minimum deal and is the definite 7th defenseman. So, I know people are upset with Cody Ceci, but you can't give Cody Ceci that much money and that much term and 3 games in, pull the plug. Like, I mean, that feels like Steve Duchesne when he signed here as a free agent and then eventually Dave Taylor had to trade him away. First year of a 4-year contract. I mean, so I think Ceci is going to get a longer runway. It's easier to put Mavari in a game, I think, to replace anybody, whether it's Ceci, Dumoulin, or Edmondson or anybody in a back-to-back. And they don't really have any of those coming up in the next week. They play Monday, get a couple days off. They come home. They play Thursday at home against Pittsburgh. They play at home again on Saturday. So you don't have those back-to-backs. And then they go on the road the following week. And at least through the first 3 games, they're also aren't they don't play any back-to-backs because I believe it goes Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday on that Nashville road trip. So they have space in between these games here. Those could be the same 6 defensemen in all of those games that I just mentioned. What is that, 6 more games? There could be the same 6 defensemen. They might be shuffled around. What I really wanted to get to, though, would be what about the forwards, Jesse? Because they've played the same 12 forwards. And yeah, there was a little bit of movement. We saw Fiala playing up with Kopitar in one of the games and some things like that. You could move some of those guys around, but I think it's far more likely that Sammy Helenius draws into a game soon than anybody drawing in on the defense. And I'm just curious how long and what game. When do you think is the right time to play Sammy? Because you don't want him sitting on the sidelines for another 2 weeks and not getting into a game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a tremendous issue with how the lines are playing.
I'm not saying I do either.
No. But I'm just like, one of my curiosities at the start of the season was, will the lines look as good as they did at the end of last year? And they don't, but that's fine because at the end of last year, they've been playing for 50 games before they, rounded into shape. This year, we're coming out of out of the offseason. So they're not going to look dynamite in games 1, 2, and 3. Like Mitch Marner didn't look all that great, I didn't think either, but I'm sure by the end of the year, he'll have a ton of points. Getting Helenius in, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'd have to, I suppose, look at the schedule and try and figure out which team is the best bet for him size-wise, like when does it make the most sense to put him in? And then the question for me becomes, do you move Turcotte to wing and take Malott out of the lineup, in which case you're swapping size for size? I don't know. This is why I'm not a head coach, because this is the kind of decision that would just fry my brain, and I would probably make the wrong decision time and time again.
I actually thought there was a good chance that Hellenius would draw in for game 2 against Vegas. After dropping game 1, I thought they would go to that, give them a little more size against Vegas.
Right.
But then, they didn't. And obviously Malott, did his thing. Then they win that game. So then you don't necessarily need to make a change, because NHL coaches do have that weird superstition where they can swap their goalies in and out and they don't think twice about it, but they don't like to change their lineup coming off of a win typically. So then you go to Winnipeg and you lose the game. So now, is the time Minnesota? Because if it's not the time in Minnesota to get Hellenius into the lineup, now he's gone over a week into the season, 4 games and hasn't played, and you have Pittsburgh coming to town. So
I guess my hunch would be St. Louis, and that's based exclusively on a stereotype of the Blues and how they play.
you're talking about 5 games from now.
Yeah.
That road trip, isn't it Nashville, then St. Louis, or is it St. Louis, then Nashville?
It's St. Louis, Dallas, Nashville, Chicago, and San Jose in that order.
Okay.
Gotcha. St. Louis is the first game on the road, and I'm just thinking, okay, Minnesota, just because, we saw the lines in Winnipeg and they didn't change a practice today, I guess. Pittsburgh and Carolina. Well, Pittsburgh is, I don't know what to think of Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh appears to not be competing.
Mm-hmm.
No,
well, not on paper, they're not.
Yeah, no disrespect to the veterans on that roster.
Look at some of the names once you get past, top 5 forwards.
Well, somebody posted their blue line and was like, "This is not an NHL blue line," and I was like, "Well, I've never heard of 3 of them."
I was just going to ask you, how many of them had you heard of?
I've heard of Erik Karlsson.
Okay, fair.
I've heard of Chris Letang, but
fine.
And I pointed it to somebody and was like, "Oh yeah, I know that guy. He was drafted, 8 years ago out of the USHL." I was like, "Well, I never heard of that guy." But then Carolina, now maybe, again, this is just biases on my part. Maybe Carolina is tougher than I think of them, but I think of them as a technically proficient team, but not a particularly physical team.
Mm-hmm.
But I think of St. Louis as a physical team.
I would agree with you.
And so toss in your 6'7", who listed at 6'6",
mm-hmm.
beast on the fourth line. And then I don't know. I mean, if you go with Armia, Malott, and Hellenius, that's a big fourth line.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up because you mentioned about sitting Malott. You don't have to. I mean,
right? You can just go with size.
Yeah, you could just go with size, and that's taking nothing away from Turcotte, because I think he's been fine during training camp. He's looked good, and and so on. So it's just the situation is they have 13 forwards. Like, to me, they have 6 defensemen and an extra defenseman.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the forwards, I think they have 13 legit forwards, and there are only 12 spots. So a little bit of a nuanced difference in my mind.
I do want to backtrack really quickly to something you said about Muvrari and getting into the lineup, because this is another thing that I always think about when it comes to decisions. It's not that contract term and AAV necessarily make the decisions for the coaching staff. But to your point, you don't sign guys like Dumoulin and Ceci to contracts that big and then just shrug and go like, "Well, enjoy the bench. We're gonna bring in our healthy scratch guy because we don't like you." Mm-hmm. Generally speaking, that is not how business is done, and whether it's sunken cost fallacy or cognitive bias on the coaching staff, whatever, like, those guys were paid a certain amount of money and were given a certain amount of term. And that means that the organization has a certain amount of faith and investment in them, and they're going to be given every chance to follow through on it. And that's just life. And also, the people who say put Muvrari in for Ceci, well, now you're talking about a pair of 2 lefties, and I just don't think that's going to happen.
Well, there's 2 things to just sort of add to that as well. Number one, I think the coach and the GM are on the same page. I think that they talk prior to signings, and I think that they sort of understand and have an agreement, and they're working towards the same, sort of end goal. So it's not that Holland said, "I'm going to sign these guys and you're going to play them." They talked and they agreed, and then they signed the players, and then so Jim Hiller is just as invested in that signing as Ken Holland would be take number one, I would give you. Take number two would be, even if Jim Hiller wasn't necessarily completely on board and maybe he would have offered him different term or different money, it's never a good look when you try to purposefully embarrass your boss. And if Jim Hiller was to bench Cody Ceci after 3 games, it's not really a good look. So that move might come at some point down the road, but we're nowhere near where being at that point quite yet. So I would just say, all of that is premature. And yes, Jesse, your comment about 2 lefties, it's just not something that the organization is very fond of.
Yeah.
And it
doesn't mean it's impossible.
Yeah. It doesn't mean it's impossible. Doesn't mean it can't happen. It just means they're not very fond of it. Yeah. And it's not the way they designed this thing. So first, switch a couple guys around and see if you can calm the waters. And, if you pick up a couple of wins and you get on the other side of 500, momentum can start to build in a positive way.
Yeah. And hopefully it does, because it's 8 out of 11 on the road. That's tough, man. That is tough for any team. John Hoven, thank you so much for joining me. You can, of course, catch John Hoven at mayorsmanor.com, across social media, Kings of the Podcast. You can hear him on various national radio programs. Is Boomers Radio, is that national? I don't.
Yes, Sirius XM,
right,
NHL Radio. Yes,
all right.
Station 91. Yes.
And if you get a Mayor's Manor sticker, you should put it on your stuff. All right. And where's my necklace? That's the final.
Jesse, we do have something coming up for you very soon. It's coming very soon. Right. I told you I was disappointed they couldn't figure the shipping out in time to get it here for opening night. But perfect. In the very, 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 very near future, I'll have something for you. And I do want to publicly say I greatly appreciated you showing up at the watch party. I thought that was pretty cool for you to be there. And obviously the fans enjoyed having you there as well. I saw you interacting with a couple different people. So thanks for coming and stopping by. And thanks to all the Kings fans, too, who came out to the watch party at Raging Cajun Cafe this past Saturday. And we're going to do another one. So
I will just quickly say this at the end, because I feel like I've repeated myself a dozen times on this, and I don't think people believe me. You and I have known each other for 20 years.
A long time.
Like, John's my friend. I've known John a long time. I was going to verify this with you at the watch party, but I know it's true. And I was just like, well, I wonder if his perspective on it is the same as my perspective on it. Like, I went on a double date with you and your wife. Like, maybe you wouldn't think of it as a date, but like you introduced me to a friend of yours who was a lady, and me and the lady and you and your wife went out and had dinner and went to a show, and like
that was a double date.
Yeah, it's a double date. Like John and I are friends. I don't know exactly where this impression that we don't get along came from. It's probably my fault, but we're friends.
Well, there were a couple years where there were some barbs that were flying back and forth, but nothing. Yes, to be clear in public, nothing that was ever demonstrative or backstabbing in any way whatsoever. No, I've appreciated Jesse for a very long time, and yes, he is my friend. So there you have it. Whatever people are thinking.
Yeah. And whatever I may say about John's opinions about hockey, at the end of the day, John is 2 things that matter the most to me when it comes to judging people. And that is, near as I can tell, I don't mean to make assumptions about things I don't know about, but John appears to be a loving husband and a great father. And at the end of the day, that's how I judge people. If your family loves you, good enough for me. So thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it, Jesse. Best of luck with your new ventures. There are multiple ventures. Best of luck with that.
Many ventures. Eyes and ears to the sky, true believers. That's what I keep telling people.
I did. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.